Hey everyone, in this video I wanted to go through some Unity navigation tips and tricks that I, as well as some other avatar and world creators, have come across throughout our time making things for this platform. And I wanted to share these things with you so that the barrier of entry to producing content for the platform is a lot easier. So with that being said, let's hop right into the video. Now, if you ever lose your hierarchy tab, you can head up to the window here and then head to Windows and mouse over hierarchy and click that to add it back in. You can also head back up to the window tab and then mouse down to the animation tab and add in an animator. And I like to drag mine over to the middle right of the scene and attach it to the side so that I can work on avatars and in the animator at the same time. We'll head back up to the window tab and we'll scroll down to animation and then we'll load in the animation tab. And this will allow us to record toggles and such for our avatars, and we'll just snap this to the project and console tab below. The next thing we're going to look at here is the ability to toggle off and on lighting in the scene, and this will allow you to essentially just look at your avatar whenever it's not lit, or if you want to see how it's affected by light sources in a scene or in a world. The next thing we'll look at here is the ability to toggle on and off audio sources in a scene as well. And this will essentially allow you to just turn off audio if something's annoying you or you're just wanting to test something else and not be bothered by audio sources. The last bit here is to be able to toggle off and on the grid system in Unity. I personally keep it off for personal preference, but whatever you decide to do is entirely up to you and your personal preferences. Now, on the top right of every window in Unity, there is a triple dot here that has the Add Tab selection, and you can add Scene, Game, Inspector, Hierarchy, and other things to it. And I'll typically add a second inspector to one of my windows so that I can then go and lock my first inspector and then select another game object so that I can then work on two game objects at the same time. Whether I need to copy over different values from one thing to another, it just allows the workflow to go much faster. Now let's take a look at Unity's camera controls. If you Alt left click, you'll be able to orbit around a game object or a center point. And then if you Alt right click, and then either mouse left or right, you'll be able to zoom out or back in, and up and down, you'll be able to zoom out or back in as well. If you middle mouse click, then you'll also be able to pan around the screen, kind of in a 2D format. And then if we press right click and then use the WASD keys, this will allow us to fly around in a freeform camera mode. However, as you can tell, I'm not very good with it because I don't use it very often. And I find this next step to be a little bit more useful when working on things in Unity. Now, if you select a game object and then you press the F key, this will focus us in on that, and then we can use our prior knowledge from our camera tools to actually orbit around the object itself and to do whatever we need to do to work on it. I find this much easier and a little bit more intuitive than using the camera fly around mode myself, but it really just comes down to personal preference. Another quick little tip here is the ability to press Alt-Shift-A, and this will allow you to toggle game objects on and off in a faster manner than going up and clicking the checkbox in the top right corner. Next, we're going to take a look at the Gizmo handle position toggles, which are pivot and local here, as well as center and global. And the respective hotkeys for these are Z and X. So if we rotate our game object here on the local axis, then you can see that the XYZ planes follow along with the game object. Whereas if we press X here and we change it to global, now we can actually move this game object across the global axes instead of the local, while maintaining its rotation that we had before. And so this just allows you to work on game objects and maintain their local position in the world. Now, if we take a look at the center and pivot point here, we can actually rotate multiple children game objects based on a parent game object, and the location of either a pivot point, that is the parent game object itself, or the center point, that is a point in between all of your children game objects. So you can see here that if we rotate these game objects, it's based on the pivot point, which is the parent game object itself. And if we change it to center here with Z, then it will actually center this pivot point between the two game objects themselves. Now, another quick and simple little trick is if you accidentally send a game object 15,000 units off in the wrong direction or something, you can just press Ctrl Z and bring it back to where you started. We're also able to press Ctrl A to select everything in our hierarchy, and then we can press either Shift D or click off of these game objects to deselect them in our hierarchy here. Now, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to find the game object that you're looking for within your hierarchy. So what you can do is use the search bar up here at the top of the hierarchy and type in the game object that you're looking for. And what happens is that the scene will essentially highlight the game object that you're looking for within your scene view. Now let's take a look at some hotkeys that I frequently use whenever working with game objects in Unity. If we press Q here, it'll give us a grabbing hand, which allows us to essentially move around like we use the middle mouse button, but also use all of our other camera functions normally like before as well. If we press W, then it will give us the ability to essentially move our game object around across the XYZ axes. And then if we press E here, it will give us the ability to actually rotate our game object across the X, Y, and Z axes. And then if we press R, this will give us the ability to scale our game object across the X, Y, and Z axes, and the center square allows us to scale evenly across all axes. This last mode here you can bring up by pressing Y, and it combines together all the previous modes that we just looked at into one large mode together. I don't personally use it myself very much because it can be kind of cluttered to work with all these different tools at the same time, but the option is there. You can also, when going into rotation mode, you can select the center in the middle of all the axes and actually rotate it across all of them at the same time. However, it can be a little finicky at times, so I don't often use this myself. Another toggle that I like to use is the Gizmos up here, which you can turn on and off fizzbones, among other things, so that you can more easily see what you're working on. You can also change the size of your 3D icons to be much smaller, which I personally do, so I can see what I'm working on a little easier. You can also turn on and off the selection outline for Gameobjects, which I do, so I can work on things a little more easily. And you can also turn on the selection wire, so you can actually see the polygons on your Gameobject that you have selected, which can be useful at times, depending on what you're doing. Now, if we head to the drop-down next to our audio mute button, we can see that we can toggle on and off our skybox, fog, flares, animated materials, post-processings, and particle systems. And this essentially just allows you to turn these different things off or on in your scene, depending on what you're wanting to see or exclude, which this can apply to avatars and worlds. A short and sweet little tip is if you want to go into play mode, just press Ctrl P and it'll toss you right in, and you can press Ctrl P to go right back out. Taking a quick look at components on avatars here, you can click Add Component, and then you can use the search feature here to find things such as the contact receivers or senders. You can also use this to find fizzbones for colliders or the fizzbones themselves. This also works for avatar descriptors when you need to add one of these to your avatar base, but it's not limited to that. You can use it for parent constraints, aim constraints, and other things as well that you might use on an avatar. Now, taking a look at our net button here, we can go up to the skinned mesh renderer, which it might be a mesh renderer for you, and select the mesh here. And down in our project folder, it'll bring up the net button, and we can select the actual mesh here. And we can look at how many vertices and tries it has, as well as the blend shapes on it. For our last thing here, we'll look at copy and pasting our transition settings. So we'll copy transition parameters and then select our other transition and right-click the same area and paste both our settings and our conditions, which allows us to just clean up our conditions themselves for whatever transition we need to make back for another animation. Hopefully there were some useful tips and tricks throughout this video for you. If there's anything that I might have missed or that you think I should add to it, just let me know in the comments down below so that we can help each other out with tips and tricks that might be useful that we've discovered ourselves. If there are some suggestions for videos that you guys have, just let me know in the comments down below, as I would love to just make more videos that are helpful for people and the barrier to entry for creating avatars on the platform or even worlds. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.